Hi, how's it going? This is Resident of Collinwood for YouTube, and I'm here to do another versus video. Joe Haskell versus Joe Haskell. In the 1966 original series, Joe Haskell was played by Joel Carruthers. In the 1991 revival, Joe Haskell was played by Michael T. Weiss, who would go on to get huge notoriety for the series Pretender, and he damn well should have. Now, these characters are really interesting. Joe in the original is very kind. He takes, more so from Carolyn. He takes a lot of guff from her at times. It's because he's honestly in love with her. I do think Joe loved Carolyn. I think Carolyn cared for Joe, but not loved him. And there is a difference with that, you're my daughter, there's a difference between love and just caring for somebody. Now, Joe gets into many scuffs. First of all, fights with these two men, local Collins sport men, for dancing with Carolyn. He doesn't like it. He gets into a fight with Burke. And I think that right there, that fight was the last straw for him. It was just like, I've bent over backwards for you, and this is what I get. And it's like that was enough. So Joe in the original, he was one of the best babyface characters. I don't think he was a heel or a bad dude. I know sometimes, and some people might point to, well, he was cheating on Maggie to, with Angelique, or, being bitten by Angelique, being summoned, Here's what I'll say to that. You gotta understand, often enough times, no two characters are the same. Joe Haskell is not Maggie Evans. So, Joe Haskell is not Maggie Evans. Where Maggie fought possession, Joe isn't so much fighting possession. He's not being told he's somebody else. He's being told he's trying to fight it, but he just can't. And that is one of the most interesting things of Joe, of all the things Joe Haskell goes through. I think the conclusion of his character in Dark Shadows is one of the most interesting ones. Because Dark Shadows was no stranger to killing off characters. I mean, look at 1795. They kill off, the curse itself. Sarah, Abigail, I say Abigail deserved it, maybe so. Naomi. There, so many people died at the hands of the curse. And then, by the way, they had killed, other characters prior to that. They killed off Dr. Dave Woodard. They killed off Dr. Guthrie. And I would say that, if I'm pointing toward... So, Joe himself, I did think they were going to kill Joe off. I think they were going to find a way to kill him off when he got bit. I thought Joe would end up with a stake through his heart in the original series. So I was glad to be wrong when I first watched this initially, years ago, years and years and years and years and years ago. But I was also shocked. And I'll get into what they did here in a second with him in the original. Now, again, Joe goes through a lot of things. Joe's relationship with Maggie, I think, was the most pure relationship to me, at that time. I love Joe and them. Joe and Maggie are one of my favorite couples in Dark Shadows because I thought that those two are going to make it. Those two are going to make it. Yeah, they didn't make it. They didn't make it as a couple. But the way they ended both characters, their location where they both ended up, it gave you a bit of a hope, is what I'll say. And so Joe goes through all this stuff. He watches his girlfriend goes miss. Maggie goes missing, and him and Maggie were engaged. I mean, they weren't just dating by that point; they were engaged. Amazing that Maggie. Again, Joe. Then they find Maggie, and Joe. It eats Joe alive that he has to lie about his fiance's death. I mean, it's just like eating at him. It's like Joe is not one for lying, and it's like, why do I have like? Man, can't they just find this guy who did this? Because deep down they know this guy's still out there somewhere. That guy being Barnabas. Now, I'm going to get back to what happened with Joe in the original here in a second. Michael T. Weiss is Joe Haskell. He's more no nonsense more than what Joel Carruthers Joe Haskell is to me. And that's just my point of view of him. He's even more ready to fight anybody and everybody than what Joel Carruthers Joe Haskell is. It's like, look, Joe in the original, because remember, Joe doesn't stand up right away at those guys who are dancing with Carolyn. He's sort of sitting there fiddling, but not Joe Haskell in a revival. I mean, he would get up in someone. He has no problem fighting with somebody. And I think that's one thing I was most shocked by. I'm thinking, wow, they're really turning up the intensity on this character to make him a bit different. What was the biggest difference? Obviously the 1991 revival, had more sexual tension than the original because they got to get away with sex scenes. And I think that's one of the best things about the revival, too. It's like, well, you got to see the sex. You tell I'm having fun already here. What's the one thing to me that really separates these two characters? Their end. I think their end. Joe Haskell. Now you might say, well, when he finds Barnabas Collins' coffin and he's ready to take it, don't you think he's gonna die? I guess that should have been my hint. But when I watched the revival for the first time and I saw that as it was, I'm like, what are they gonna do with Joe here? What are they gonna do? They have him find Barnabas Collins' coffin. He looks like he's ready to kill Barney. He had a stake in hand. He's ready to go. But no, he's killed by Dr. Hoffman, who's possessed by Angelique. I was shocked. I mean, you want to talk about one of the most shocking deaths? That's it. I mean, it was really shocking and really surprising and really well done. Well set up, really awesome. You could tell, here's what I'll say with this. As these go on, you'll see the differences are getting slimmer and slimmer because, again, you can only put so much fresh coat of paint on each character. What's something they could have did a little more different with Joe? I don't know, honestly. Not at this point in time. Usually I'd have an answer for you. Maybe they could have had him and Carolyn already be married. There you go. That could have been a huge difference for the revival. Maybe Joe could have already been married to Carolyn. That would have been, because again, Joe never gets married to anybody in the original. Why not have him be married in the revival? Maybe to Carolyn, not to Maggie, because we know what's going on there. I'm sorry. It's so good. It's so good. Oh my god. So I came up with something. He could have had Joe in the revival be married to Carolyn, and I think that would have worked. Why not? Why not have him already be married, be a member of the family, and show this hard-working class person? Again, I think Joe was a lot more hot-tempered in the revival than he was the original, so that's a difference. He dies in the revival. He's more hot-tempered in the revival. They kill him in the revival. In the original, Joe Haskell doesn't get killed. Another thing, here's a similarity. Neither character gets married. Neither character gets married. In the revival, I believe he's engaged to Carolyn. If I'm wrong, please correct me. But I believe he's engaged to Carolyn in the revival. Now, again, I feel they should have just had them. Maybe by the time Vicky shows up in the revival, they could have had them just getting married. That's something they could have did. Maybe that's what they could have been planning that wedding or getting ready to do that wedding. That's something they could have did in the revival that I feel maybe they should have did. Now, I talked about Joe dying in the revival. That does not happen in the original series, my friends. What happens to Joe? It's fitting that him and Maggie basically get reunited, because Joe and Maggie are in the same place by the time the series ends. Well, Joe's there well before the series ends. Joe Haskell, Joel Carruthers' character, ends up in Wyncliffe Sanitarium. I won't mess up the name this time. At the behest of Dr. Hoffman, they commit him. That's something that, sort of gets lost. Maggie should have moved to Bangor instead of staying at Collinwood. And maybe moved to Bangor, sold her dad's house, moved to Bangor, and sort of waited for Joe. That doesn't happen. But it's really interesting that both those characters do sort of get reunited by the end of the series, because Maggie ends up in the very same place Joe Haskell already is. And I think that's one of the best differences with these characters. Again, with some of these characters, you're not going to necessarily have the biggest fresh coat of paint. But for the most part, in the revival, that was there. I think that's the one thing I'm really trying to point out with these videos. Those characters in the revival, for the most part, were similar in name only. And that's the one thing I'm trying to get across here. If you see we have these streamers here, we're celebrating a huge birthday today. So wanted to get this video up for you guys. I'm going to go celebrate my son's birthday today. So you guys have a great day. I want to hear from you guys in this. What did you think of not just Joel Carruthers' Joe Haskell, but Michael T. Weiss's Joe Haskell? I think they were both very interesting. Am I going to do Elizabeth versus Elizabeth? No. And let me tell you why. I don't think there's enough of a separation. I'm going to say that right now. I do think the characters were played to a slight difference, but not enough of a difference to do a video on. And that's what I'll say. I usually don't do that. And this is what I mean by sometimes these characters are not that different. There's going to be those characters who aren't necessarily different. So, my final versus video will be Barnabas Collins versus Barnabas Collins. I, I will probably do that one. I don't know. Maybe in a week. Maybe in a couple days. I'll see. We'll see if I can get some time. I'll definitely do it. I want to thank everybody. I mean, I'm covering that ground. Everybody who comes on and just supports this channel. Huge thank you to all of you, all the Dark Shadows fans. Huge thank you. Just thank you so much. And hey guys, hope you had a happy 4th of July and have a great day.